Welcome back, YouTube. Today, I want to talk to you about training in prep or in your off season. Should your training change? And how should it change if it should? The first principle you have to remember is this. What built the muscle will certainly hold it there. When you are training the off season, your goal is to create as much mechanical tension on the muscle tissue as you physically can. Your goal is training as heavy and as accurately as possible with training volume you can handle and you can recover from. There has to be a degree of progression in your logbook, and there has to be some sort of quantifiable measure of progression. So you have to be moving forward one way or another. Whether it's extra repetitions, extra load on the bar, there has to be progress within your training block. If there isn't any progress within your training block, or you are struggling to maintain your numbers in prep, the volume you're working with is likely too high. If all of your factors are in check, like your lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, stress management, etc., then I would potentially look at volume. If some of these things are not on point, potentially you need to sort them out, as they can influence your training performance and recovery. So priority is to always have all your affairs in order. Once you get all your affairs in order, then you know whether your programming is correct or not. If you are feeling constantly fatigued and you are not able to actually progress your lifts, guess what? You are likely doing too much. Another mistake I often see people make is training past failure with moderate to high volumes. If you are following, for example, a push-pull leg split, and you have 12 to 16 working sets in a single session. So for a push day, that could be 3 to 4 working sets of shoulders, 4 working sets of chest, and 4 working sets of tricep. Right? That's 12 working sets already. There could be more, could be less. If you are taking each set to failure or close to failure, and then adding any intensifiers, and you are training on a high frequent basis, that may actually be too much volume. For me personally, I prefer straight sets to failure without any scrappy reps. I personally have seen the most progress, and this is me speaking from experience. Both myself and Jordan Peters have both seen the most progress in our life training with clean repetitions to failure and nothing past failure. If we are unsure if the next rep is going to be a full complete rep, we do not attempt them. So we have a rule that we follow now, and that is we do not attempt any 50-50 reps, especially on big press work, big compound exercises. We have found that taking those 50-50 reps and training past that failure point actually costs you a lot of progress. And this is something that I have seen firsthand with many, many clients, and I have seen it from experience myself. The second I was able to have self-control and be able to stop the set when appropriate, I have seen more progress. And this will simply apply in your prep and in your off season. More importantly, I would argue in an off season setting when you are already pushing the envelope with the loading and trying to progress your lift as much as possible. So where training will differ between prep and off season is not the exercise selection. The exercise selection should not change vastly. You should already establish the exercise selection that you like, you connect with, and you can safely progress or at least maintain with your strength throughout your off season into prep. So it should be a smooth transition where you know exactly how much volume you can handle in terms of number, in terms of your actual working sets. And this could vary between 4 to 6 working sets per muscle in a single session. Some people will need more volume, some people will need less. It all depends on your recovery capabilities and your ability to progress your lifts. That is ultimately what's going to dictate your training volume needs. What also contributes to training volume is how close to failure you train. Whether you train past failure, all of these things do play a role alongside of your resistance profiles and your rep ranges. So when it comes to training volume as a whole, you have to understand it's not just number of sets you need to think about. It's certain exercises that are going to create more volume than others, such as 2 working sets on leg extension, for example, doesn't compare to 2 working sets on hack squat. So not all volume is created equal. Starting your contest prep, you should have a similar or the same amount of working sets that you had that was allowing you to progress your lifts in the off season. As you transition to contest prep, one thing you should not do is try and chase a pump. As you go into a calorie deficit and you have less carbohydrates, less calories going in, you will not experience the same pump. That does not mean your session is less successful. That does not mean you are making less progress or losing muscle tissue. That simply means you are eating less food. Your priority and the goal is maintaining the highest degree of multi-unit recruitment in your muscle and the highest degree of mechanical tension. What will allow you to do that is maintaining your strength. So essentially, it's not just the number of sets you have to focus on. Instead, you have to focus on your ability to uphold your training performance. In an off-season setting, your goal is progression. In a prep setting or any diet phase, your goal is maintaining your strength to the best of your ability. And if that means your direct training volume, which is your number of sets, needs to reduce, then do so. I would rather see someone do 10 working sets as opposed to 12 to 13, 14 working sets and stay 20% stronger. That will ultimately lead to holding more muscle tissue because the quality and the mechanical tension is greater, especially when you are maintaining the quality of your reps. A big mistake I see people make when they transition to contest prep or a diet phase is that they still try and continue progress lifts the same way they did in an off-season setting, and that's just not realistic. As you transition to a diet phase, you will lose body weight. When you lose body weight and body fat, you lose leverage. With the loss of leverage, some of your bigger lifts will unfortunately take a hit. However, when you look at your program as a whole, 80% of your lifts, your loading should remain the same. 20% of your lifts, you have to expect a slight loss in strength due to stability and less body weight that comes alongside of leverage. This would be exercises like your hip hinges, your chest compound exercises like your big chest pressing movements, incline Smith, big machine presses, some of compound exercise for your back, chest supported rows, for example, and hack squat leg press. As a whole, you should be able to maintain majority of your strength. If you are losing strength, you will lose muscle. If you're finding yourself that you are not able to hold your lifts or maintain good strength or good execution, sometimes you may need to reset your loading and reduce the load slightly, but essentially you want to stay as strong as possible. And the main way to do that is potentially a slight volume reduction. Do not be afraid to pull back on your volume to maintain your strength. Make sure that you are prioritizing your sleep and nutrition, especially around your training window. If some of the lifestyle factors are not playing ball, you may actually experience some loss in strength due to these factors. So make sure that you're on point with the management of your days. When it comes to rep ranges, as you transition to a diet phase, you will not have the same amount of fuel going in. Your glycogen stores are not going to be as full. You are going to have to go through periods where you are flat. Therefore, you need to pick appropriate rep ranges. Your rep range inevitably will need to come down slightly, especially if you have opted to work in slightly higher rep ranges in the off season. That's completely fine. You have the fuel going in, you have the carbohydrates to facilitate high rep work. However, in a contest prep setting, in a diet phase, you do not have the fuel coming in to facilitate high rep work. So you may also need to adjust your rep ranges to suit each phase that you are going in. In an off-season setting, in an off-season phase, you may explore higher rep work because you have an abundance of carbohydrates fueling higher rep work. In a calorie deficit, you need to consider reducing your rep ranges, not chasing a pump, and instead chasing quality repetitions and maintaining your strength. The differences between training and prep and off-season should not vary that much. I definitely feel like there's slight adjustments you can make, and some of the big adjustments that you can also make is exercise selection. In an off-season setting, you may opt for a lot of exercises that require internal stability. Dumbbell presses, hip hinges, free weight barbell squats, a lot of free weight movements. As you come down in body weight, you lose some of that stability. You lose internal stability. Therefore, some of these movements that require stability may actually take a hit first and foremost. So consider moving from free weights onto machines as you transition into your diet phase to prevent some of the performance loss that can actually come as a byproduct of you losing some stability as you lose body weight. For example, moving away from a free bar squat pattern onto a hack squat. This can actually lead to much better stimulus and potentially even less fatigue, allowing you to still have a lot of mechanical tension to give the muscle a reason to stay, especially whilst you are in a calorie deficit. When it comes to training progressions, only take them if they are there. Your goal in a deficit is not progressing your lifts. Your goal in the deficit is staying as strong as you did in the peak of your off season. This will vary between natural athletes and assisted athletes. Some assisted athletes, due to external factors that are coming in, may actually gain some strength, especially initially in the first portion of the prep. However, as a whole, especially in natural athletes, your goal is not progressing your lifts. In a contest prep, your goal is simply upholding and maintaining quality and execution and maintaining your strength to the best of your ability. The fight begins, and you should change your perception where you are taking wins from turning up into your sessions and maintaining the quality with less body weight. That in itself is seen in my eyes as a form of progression. So your perception has to change a little bit. You have to embrace maintaining lifts and maintaining quality, and that can be an extremely hard thing to get your head wrapped around. But I promise you guys, I have seen so many people chase the logbook and chase progression in a calorie deficit, both natural and assisted, and it has inevitably cost them a lot of muscle, because the second they start to chase the loading for sake of loading, they change their execution. They make the lifts easier, resulting in much less tension on the muscle, which then results, guess in what? Less mechanical tension on the muscle, recruiting much less muscle fibers, and therefore losing some of that density they have worked incredibly hard for. So be mindful of that, guys, and make sure that you are super, super wary of the differences between your off-season training and your training in a contest prep. This is an overview that I feel like can benefit a lot of you going into this year's prep or into your diet phases, giving you some insight on what considerations you may need to make for your training between an off-season setting and a contest prep. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you need anything from trainedbyjp.com, please use my code Kuba10. If you have made it to the very end, comment off-season gains and we will know exactly what or who is a true legend. Guys, I appreciate you all. If you need anything from myself or my team, Team MK Coaching for consultations, our mentorship program, and general help, guys, reach out if you need us. Thank you so much, guys. Peace out and take care for now. We're out.